Welcome to the Abyss of Crime, where we delve into the darkest corners of the human psyche and explore the most chilling and controversial cases of crime. In this episode, we will be investigating the tragic and gruesome case of Laura Lopez, a young girl who was brutally murdered and dismembered. Join us as we unravel the twisted web of events that led to her untimely death and shedding light on the deeper issues that plague our society. Laura Lopez was a young schoolgirl who lived in a small town in Argentina. She was a lively and sociable person with many friends and a loving family. However, her life was cut short in the most brutal and horrifying way imaginable. In September 2019, Laura went on a date with a man she had met at school. She was found 3 days later, her body cut into pieces in a nearby river. Meeting strangers is always risky, especially when the date takes place in their territory, where they have control over the situation. In such cases, it is important to think about possible escape routes in advance, and to completely refuse to meet with suspicious people. However, these arguments about caution and foresight are often ignored, especially by young people who believe that nothing bad will ever happen to them. Laura Lopez did not feel any danger when she went on a date with a man who was 10 years older than her. They went to the same school and she thought that was enough to trust him. Unfortunately, no one else saw her alive after that night. 3 days later, local fishermen found the remains of her body in the river. The case shook Argentina and was widely discussed in the media. Laura was born on September 11, 2001, in Neuquén province, in the southwestern part of Argentina. She was a very late child in the family, and her older twin sisters, Damaris and Melissa, were already 18 years old at the time of her birth. Her parents were over 40, and Laura was a real miracle and the apple of her family's eye. However, when she was only 3 years old, her mother died due to a long-standing illness. Her father could not cope with the loss and fell into a deep, prolonged depression and began to abuse alcohol. All the worries about little Laura fell on her older sister's shoulders, who had to grow up quickly and combine their studies with work and raising their little sister. Laura grew up to be an open and very sociable child. She always had a lot of friends, easily found common ground with others, and was creative and played the guitar. In high school, she started working part-time to help her family and have pocket money for her own needs. She sold street food and tried to save a little money for university. At the age of 17, she lived with her father, one of her older sisters, her husband, and their children, all together in the same house. Laura often babysat her nephews, helped them with their homework, and took care of them. She dreamed of getting a degree, finding a good job, and starting her own family. On Thursday, September 12, 2019, Laura returned from school and helped her sister with the nephews while preparing lunch for the whole family. They chatted, made plans for the upcoming weekend, and were going to go to the park with the children in the late afternoon. Laura received a call from her school friend Cecilia, who offered to meet. Laura agreed and went to her friend's house, which was just a couple of blocks away from her own house. For the next 2 hours, the girls sat in the kitchen, drinking a bottle of wine they had secretly bought, discussing the news, and gossiping. They also took a couple of pictures together, which they posted on their social media. Towards midnight, the girls said goodbye, and Laura went home. However, her decision to meet up with a friend in the evening was the last normal moment before her disappearance. The alarm bells did not ring immediately when Laura did not return home that night. It was not until the next morning that her family realized something was terribly wrong. The initial police report was filed with a sense of urgent desperation, but that response was frustratingly slow, mired in the all-too-common assumption that Laura might have simply run away. At home, her sister Melissa, after making sure that Laura was back, went to bed. However, the girl herself, already in her room despite the late time, was scrolling through her social media, checking emails, and chatting with a couple of friends in messengers. In the morning, Melissa was getting ready for work and noticed that her younger sister did not come to breakfast. She looked into her room, and when she saw that she was nowhere to be found, decided that Laura was in a hurry and left earlier. However, at lunch, a worried Cecilia called Melissa and asked if Laura was all right. Melissa was confused by this question, and when she found out that her sister did not show up at school and her phone was unavailable, she became scared. It turned out that no one had seen Laura since the previous night, and it was impossible to contact her. Her phone was missing, and the last time she was active on social media was at 3 a.m. Melissa immediately called her other sister, Damaris, and told her everything. The sisters went to the police station together to report a missing person. However, the police did not take the situation seriously. It looked like Laura had run away from home at night, and there were no signs that she was in danger. The search for Laura was going to begin only a day after, in case she did not return home by that time. But the sisters decided not to wait and not waste so much time. They called Laura's friends and acquaintances, trying to find out at least some information about her possible whereabouts. They also posted information about Laura on social media and asked all concerned people to help in the search and in distributing bulletins. On Saturday, the girl was still missing, and the police finally joined the search. By that time, information about the missing girl had already spread throughout the city and became one of the main news. So far, the search had no results, and the relatives still hoped that Laura would be found alive and unharmed. All their hopes were broken on Sunday morning, September 15th. Two men fishing on the Lemay River found something frightening in the water. When they pulled out a strange object with a net, they literally shuddered with horror. There was a part of a human leg in front of them. In addition, a few feet away near the breakwaters floated several more parts of a dismembered body. The fishermen immediately reported their gruesome find to the police. The police officers who arrived at the scene took a total of 8 severely damaged human body parts out of the water. It was obvious that the remains belonged to a young girl, but it was difficult to identify them since they had been in the water for a long time. Judging by the nature of the injuries, the body was dismembered by a man who does not understand human anatomy, but knows how to handle cold arms and has good physical strength. The killer also tried to do everything possible to complicate the identification process as much as possible and disfigured the victim's face. Nearby, at the bottom of the river, a huge butcher knife was found, which apparently was the weapon of the crime. However, the water washed away all the prints from it, as well as traces of the victim's blood. Nevertheless, the weapon was attached to the case file as an important piece of evidence. About a mile away from the place where the body was found, the police found torn women's clothes, underwear, one sneaker, as well as a tote bag. The police immediately assumed that the remains could belong to a girl who went missing 3 days ago, and who the whole city was looking for. The last doubts about this disappeared even before the DNA test was carried out. The relatives identified the found items and confirmed that they belonged to Laura. The autopsy and investigation revealed that the cause of death of the girl was a closed, traumatic brain injury, which led to severe hemorrhage. The experts also managed to establish that a killer brutally took advantage of the girl before her death, as evidenced by the characteristic injuries in her private parts. After Laura suffered a head injury, she did not die immediately, and was alive for about 3 more hours. If she had received proper medical care at that time, she would most likely have remained alive. Experts found out that hematomas and other injuries sustained when she was still alive were a result of her trying to defend herself. However, the man was stronger. Laura had several teeth knocked out, her ribs were broken, and bruises could be seen on her wrists, as if they were being squeezed hard. At the first stages of the investigation, Laura's family, as well as close friends and classmates, were questioned. However, none of them was included in the list of suspects. The situation began to change rapidly after the detective restored the data from Laura's phone, and were pivotal in steering the direction of the investigation towards specific suspects. It turned out that at about 3 o'clock in the morning, she was in her house when she began to receive messages from some man who offered her to meet. The suspect turned out to be 28-year-old Alfredo Emilio Escobar, who lived near Lopez's house. He and Laura knew each other and went to the same school, but they did not communicate very often due to the big age difference and different interests. However, they had a lot of mutual acquaintances, and sometimes the girl crossed paths with Alfredo in different companies. The main suspect, Escobar, worked as a mechanic and was a tall and strong young man. He was also known in the city as an avid partygoer who enjoys parties with a lot of alcohol and illegal substances. He organized similar parties at home when his parents went to visit relatives for the weekend. Alfredo had a reputation for being short-tempered and prone to conflict. When he was under the influence of alcohol or illegal substances, he was aggressive and even dangerous to people. It's hard to say why he suddenly decided to text Laura. According to Laura's close friend, she never mentioned anything about Escobar. But on Friday night, at about 3:15, when he saw that the girl was online, the young man sent her the first message, asking why she was not sleeping at such a late hour. They chatted for a bit, and about 10 minutes later, he called her. After that, 2 more calls were made from Alfredo's phone to Laura's phone. At that time, each of them was at home. However, after another quarter of an hour, the guy's phone was already located at the girl's house, and then they went to his house together. Closer to 6 o'clock in the morning, Lopez's phone was already turned off, and the last time the phone signal was traced at Escobar's house. The girl left voluntarily with her killer, as evidenced by her neat room, as well as the fact that she took her bag with her, in which she put perfume and makeup products. Most likely, Laura saw what was happening as a kind of adventure, and expected that she would return home by morning, and her escape would go unnoticed. Security camera footages confirmed the investigators' assumptions. Alfredo's pickup truck was indeed heading towards Laura's house, and then in the opposite direction that morning. It was obvious that at first, there was one person in the car, and on the way back, someone was already sitting in the passenger seat. Escobar's phone was disconnected the next day, and it was quite difficult to track the young man's movements. However, his car was spotted on the same security cameras. In particular, the recording showed how he was heading to the bridge over the Li River. However, after crossing the bridge, he turned off-road, where there were no cameras. The police assumed that there he got rid of the dismembered body parts, which were found the next day. Alfredo had previously been arrested by the police, but mostly for minor offenses, such as fighting and taking illegal substances. However, about a year ago, the guy, while under the influence of illegal substances, exceeded the speed limit and crashed into a police car. After that, he tried to escape from the scene, and when the police found him, he tried to resist, for which he went to the police station. Then Alfredo faced a prison sentence, but for some reason the case was hushed up, and the criminal got off with only a small fine. In the same way, a few years earlier, Escobar escaped criminal punishment for intentionally causing harm to one's health. The case of the sale of illegal substances to minors was also closed. Obviously, Alfredo had a criminal background, but he was either lucky or some influential patron stood up for him. In any case, Alfredo believed he was innocent, and his shenanigans became more and more daring. On September 17th, a police unit drove up to Escobar's house. The police officers arrived just in time and caught the suspect, as well as his parents, loading things into a pickup truck. It turned out that the family was going to leave the city for a while and go to relatives at the request of their son, who was in a hurry to hide after learning about the findings in the river. This time, Alfredo did not resist arrest, but tried to pretend that he did not understand what was happening and what he was accused of. However, the guy was very nervous, which gave him away. He also immediately asked for a lawyer. A medical examination revealed signs of a struggle on his body, as well as several scratches on the knuckles of his right hand, as if he had beaten someone. DNA tests confirmed that traces of biological fluid found inside Laura's body belonged to Alfredo, which proved that he was the offender. They also found particles of the man's epithelial tissue under Laura's nails. After that, Escobar was officially charged with rape, murder, and dismemberment. During the search in Alfredo's bedroom, the police found a lot of bloodstains, as well as the victim's fingerprints and her contact lens. However, the most terrible find awaited the investigators in the outbuildings behind the house. Obviously, it was the place where the young man dismembered the girl's body. There was blood literally everywhere, as well as traces of dragging at the gate, on which bloody prints were also found. Despite all the evidence, the accused continued to stubbornly deny his guilt. However, the detectives managed to recreate the chain of events that happened that fateful night and led to the terrible death of a young girl. The killer deleted all calls and messages from his phone in advance, trying to hide the fact that he and Laura were chatting. However, the information was easily restored. The day before the tragedy, Alfredo found Laura's page on social media and liked some of her posts. On Friday night, when he saw that the girl was online, he texted her and then called, offering to meet and go for a ride. Laura hesitated, but the guy was persistent and called her twice more. Then he drove up to her house. Escobar then lured the girl to his home, where he began to molest her. When she refused, he got angry, hit her several times, and then took her by force. Lopez tried to break free, cried, and threatened to report him to the police. The criminal could not allow this and therefore hit the girl on the head so that she would not scream and try to escape. He started thinking about what to do next. He dragged Laura's unconscious body into the shed, and when he realized that she was no longer breathing, he decided to get rid of the corpse in a radical way. He used a large butcher knife as well as some tools that were in the workshop. Alfredo, who worked as a mechanic, did not have any knowledge of human anatomy. However, he was quite strong and dismembered the body as best as he could. In the morning, Alfredo took the remains of the body in his pickup truck, drove to the river, and dumped them into the water, hoping that he would remain unnoticed. He also threw away the victim's clothes and the crime weapon. Then the killer washed his room. He did not even clean up the shed, only put more sand on the floor. For the next couple of days, he was absolutely calm and behaved as usual. However, when he heard rumors about a body found in the river, Alfredo decided to flee the city, taking his parents with him. His parents did not suspect anything. The trial and sentence of the criminal were not easy. The lawyer defending Escobar initially asked not to press charges against his client until irrefutable evidence was found and the results of the DNA test came back. However, when all the evidence was collected and there was no doubt that it was Alfredo who committed this awful crime, the defender changed tactics. He tried to blame the victim, saying that she herself agreed to go home to the man, voluntarily agreed to have an intimate relationship with him, and then started to blackmail him, threatening to report him to the police. However, the defense evidence turned out to be very inconclusive, and the defendant's attempt to simulate a mental disorder failed miserably. All the evidence and the nature of the defendant's behavior indicated that he knowingly committed the crime, and then tried to hide the traces. The victim's blood and DNA were found in his room, in the outbuilding on the property, in the cabin of the car, as well as in the back of his pickup truck. Alfredo's ex-girlfriend also spoke in court and reported his addiction to illegal substances and propensity to violence. According to her, at the time when they were dating, the man repeatedly used violence against her and also stole money from her purse and then spent it on illegal substances. Escobar was found guilty on all counts of the charges against him and sentenced to life in prison without the right to apply for parole. The man did not admit his guilt, did not repent of what he did, and did not ask for forgiveness from the family of the murdered girl. The case of Laura Lopez is a tragedy that will never be forgotten. The memory of a young and talented girl will always remain in the hearts of her family, friends, and all those who knew her. This case once again reminds us that we need to be cautious and careful in our lives, especially when it comes to meeting strangers and trusting them. As we near the end of our investigation into the Laura Lopez case, we have a question for our audience. What do you think is the most important lesson to be learned from this tragic tragedy? Is it the importance of caution and foresight when meeting strangers? Or is it the need for a more comprehensive and effective approach to addressing the issues of violence and mental health in our society? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The tragic case of Laura Lopez is a somber reminder of the fragility of life. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the shadows of the abyss of crime. As we conclude our exploration of the Laura Lopez case, we hope it has illuminated the deeper issues that lurk beneath the surface of society and sparked important conversations about the way we approach crime and justice. If this series has captured your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the darkest corners of criminal investigations. Please click the bell icon to ensure you don't miss any updates. Your engagement helps us bring these important stories to light. Until next time, stay vigilant and keep seeking the truth. Goodbye for now.